Welcome back to another explainer. Look, learning to code can feel like staring up at a massive, unscalable mountain. But today, we're diving into a step-by-step JavaScript roadmap to change that. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the mere idea of programming, take a deep breath. We're going to break this journey down into a highly structured, chronological roadmap. By focusing on the exact essential order of topics, we're going to architect your understanding completely anxiety-free. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the web development trifecta, outline your specific JavaScript learning roadmap, dive into mastering the DOM, and finally, set up your toolkit. Let's get right into it.
Part 1, the web development trifecta, and the prerequisites you actually need before jumping into JavaScript.
Right, so before we get to the JavaScript goodness, we've got to set our foundation. You see, JavaScript doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It works alongside two other core technologies. We start with HTML. Think of HTML as the literal skeleton of your project. It's what gives your web pages their basic structure. Now, you absolutely don't need to be a wizard here. You really just need to know enough to build a simple bare-bones page. Once that skeleton is standing, you're ready for the next layer. And that next layer is CSS. So if HTML is the skeleton, CSS is the skin and the clothes. It's how you style up that simple page and make it look, well, good. Again, you don't need to be a CSS pro before moving on, but having these basics down, absolutely crucial. Why? Well, because as you'll soon see, JavaScript actually uses CSS a lot to dynamically change how things look and behave on your page. Which brings us to the star of the show. If you've got the skeleton and the clothes, JavaScript is the muscle and the brain. It's the core tech that injects dynamic interactivity into what would otherwise just be static pages. Once you've got a handle on HTML and CSS, you are 100% ready to get cracking with JavaScript. Moving right along to part 2, your JavaScript learning roadmap, taking you step by step to coding. As a newcomer, the sequence in which you learn this stuff is everything. It's literally the difference between quitting and succeeding. We're going to build your knowledge brick by brick. First, syntax, then data types, followed by control flow, then mastering the DOM, and finally tying it all together into simple programs. Sticking to this specific essential order of topics means you'll pick it up with practically zero overwhelm. Let's break these down. Step 1 is JavaScript syntax. Basically, these are just the fundamental rules for writing the code. And hey, I want to reassure you right now, syntax can look incredibly daunting at first glance. It honestly looks like a foreign language, but I promise you, once you get the hang of it, it becomes totally simple. Once you grasp these fundamental rules, that initial intimidation just completely melts away. All right, rules out of the way, step 2 is data types. This is simply how we categorize and handle different pieces of information in our code. The core ones you're going to start with are integers, which, are just numbers, strings, which are sequences of text characters, and booleans, which represent simple, true, or false values. Figuring out how to label and store this data is totally critical before we can actually tell the program what to do with it. And telling the program what to do brings us to step 3, control flow. This controls how a program runs. It forms the underlying logic. In JavaScript, control flow relies really heavily on things like loops, allowing you to repeat actions, and conditional statements. Conditionals let the program make decisions, like a fork in the road, deciding what happens next based on certain conditions. This right here is where your code really starts to think. Section 3, mastering the DOM. This is literally the heart of front-end development. Step 4 on our roadmap is so monumental, it gets its own section. We're diving into the document object model, or just the DOM for short. The DOM is the bridge. It is exactly how your JavaScript muscle communicates with that HTML skeleton we talked about earlier. Through the DOM, your code manipulates elements, changing your website's look and feel on the fly. Without understanding this bridge, your JavaScript is essentially trapped, totally isolated from your web page. To put that into perspective, there's a quote from our source material that hits the nail on the head. A professional developer notes, "The DOM is the core of my skill set and probably should be of yours too. It's arguably the single most important skill you'll master on this entire journey." You see, once you master the DOM, you have the ultimate power to truly bring a website to life. Finally, Section 4, setting up your toolkit with industry-standard tools. Step 5 of the roadmap is putting everything together to write some simple programs of our own. But before you start typing out code, we need to shift from theory to practice by setting up your professional toolkit. Now listen, you don't have to download these exact tools right this second, but if you want to follow along exactly how the pros do it, here are the industry recommendations. For your text editor, the go-to is brackets.io. And for your web browser, it's Google Chrome.
Let's look at why these two specifically make the cut. Brackets is a totally free text editor for Windows or Mac, and its absolute standout feature is built-in IntelliSense, which helps you write your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript way more efficiently. On the flip side, you need a place to actually test that code. You can technically use any browser, sure, but Google Chrome is highly recommended because of its embedded developer tools and its incredibly useful console. These are the standard tools you're going to rely on heavily for testing and debugging your newly written code.
So there you have the whole shebang. You've got your foundational trifecta, you've got a precise, chronological roadmap from syntax straight through to the DOM, and you know exactly which tools to grab. I'll leave you with this one final thought. Are you ready to stop talking and start building? Will you open that text editor today and breathe life into your very first interactive web page?